Okay, this is an unusual video for me, but because it's New Year's, I'm going to do something slightly different, something I've never done before. I'm going to go through the games that I've played um, that I consider to be big monster games, campaign games that I've played, and I'm going to give you my opinion of them from the perspective of playing the big campaigns, getting these monster games to the table, seeing how I sort of get on with them. Now, sometimes I'm going to be fairly controversial. If a game, just because I don't like a game, doesn't mean it's a bad game. This is my opinion, and it's my opinion from trying to play the campaign games. And sometimes you've got good games that mechanically don't fit with me, or um, they are so difficult to learn they um, become too much of a challenge and unfun for me to play. So we might as well start with the game that's on the table. We've got a fair way through this War of the Suns, which is the Chinese War of Resistance, 1935 to no, sorry, 1937 to 1945. What I can say about this is it's it's got a horrendous learning curve. I mean, it's serious amount of stuff in this game. The designer definitely threw in the kitchen sink with this. It can be very fiddly. Now, I've house ruled a couple of the really fiddly rules, which I won't go into at this particular stage. But all in all, if you put the work in, I would say it's a good game. It's the only game you could really go to if you're interested in this particular period of time. The War of Resistance, which is the Europa one, is even more complicated and difficult to play. So I would rate this as a solid 7 out of 10 so far. Next one I'll look at is Thunder on the Mississippi, which is great campaigns of the American Civil War. It's the latest volume. It's a good solid entry into that particular series. Um, some people say mechanically the series is a bit weird because it is a roller dice and move system, but it actually manages to simulate American Civil War campaigns pretty well. I enjoyed the game as I played it. Some people might find that trying to battle your way to Vicksburg is a bit of an ordeal. I didn't finish the game, but that wasn't any reason. It wasn't because I didn't like it. It's just because I felt that I'd want to do something a bit different. And that's something you'll find as a theme with me. I'll play a game, and while I'm enjoying it, I'll keep playing it, and often I'll just say, "Oh, I want to try something else." So you've got to bear that in mind with me. So I would say that Mississippi, Thunder on the Mississippi, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Good solid entry to a good solid system. Um, CSS Montelimar, which is part of the company scale system, which I played quite a while ago. Yet again, it's a it's a series that is based on Grand Tactical System. It's not as good, but that was a pretty solid entry, and it was about a period in the war. It was the Allied breakout from the invasion of southern France. It's something I've never seen been covered before. Yeah, again, I'd rate it as a 7 out of 10. I haven't got any great problems with it. GTS is one of my favourite systems. That's a slight modification of it. Nothing I could say that would make me um, change my mind about that one. I enjoyed it for when I played it. Next one is the Third World War. This is the designer signature edition. Now, I played all the way through the pre-war thing using the Middle East, which is basically simulates a civil war in Iran and dragging the various superpowers into it slowly, and I enjoyed that. But when the game went on to being playing the main war in Europe, it bogged down really quickly into stalemates. There was a stalemate, well, not say stalemate, it was a slugfest in the Balkans. There was a stalemate in Norway. There was a slugfest in Germany. Even the Middle East theatre was degenerating into a slugfest, and I didn't like it because of that. It just became a lot of work, and wasn't getting the fun out of it. So I could only rate that a 5 out of 10. It could be a better fit for other people. You know, it just depends on how you like things. Now another one, I played The Greatest Day, Sword, Juno, and Gold, which is a Grand Tactical System game. Now, don't get me wrong, this is a good game. It's a good solid system, GTS. The thing I didn't like about The Greatest Day was the fact it covers amphibious invasions. I'm not a big fan of amphibious invasions. That was tricky, but I got through it. But the big problem with it was it's like I've got an arbitrary time scale. I think there's like a campaign you're playing the first 2 weeks. You get no feeling of an epic operation. That sort of limitation on the time scale, it didn't work for me. Yet again, I'm sure it'll work for other people. I only rated it a 5 out of 10, but I could easily see people rating that really highly. Another big one I covered was De Weltkrieg. Covered the Eastern Front combined scenario. Now this is a great game. The only problem with it is it's huge. And I mean, even by my standards, it's absolutely gigantic. In the end, I played it for long enough, and I wanted to do something different. It's not a particularly difficult rule set to learn, but it has lots of little minute mechanics in the way that uh, things are modified differently the further you get into the game. You know, you could say, well, in 1915 it works a bit like this, and in 1916 there's more changes, and 17. So it gets can get a bit overwhelming in that sense. There's a lot of very specific time-related rules. I still rate that as a very good game, and I'd probably rate it 8 out of 10, maybe even higher. It depends, but it's a World War One game, and it's got World War One pacing, and that may not be to your liking. Okay, just remember that. Death Ride Salerno. Oh dear. Now, this one, I didn't like it at all. It was a horrendous game to get set up. I mean, it's one of the worst setups I've ever had to endure. The mechanics of the game are incredibly fiddly. The rule set's small, but it's fiddly in the fact that you're having to use fractional mathematics all the time when you're playing it, which is a big turn off. And also the way units can just activate. No, I didn't like it, and I can't really say much more. You'd probably have to watch my video and summing it up what I didn't like about it. I did say at the end it would probably be a very good game if you were playing small scenarios, but trying to play the campaign game, it was a definite dud for me. 3 out of 10. Another one that didn't go very well was Red Strike by VUCA Simulations maybe. That's about World War III again. That one, really, it's the air combat system. It's just so fiddly. It's just too complex. It was just not fun. Even playing out the first turn I could tell straight away I wasn't going to like this. And I can only really rate that a 3 out of 10. I think there's a lot of people who would like it, but the campaign game, in my humble opinion, is unplayable. Another controversial one, now this one did upset a few people, was 1914 Twilight in the East. Yeah, again, it's a good simulation World War One on the Eastern Front, but it only covers a very specific period of World War One in 1914, and it only covers Prussia, Poland, Galicia. It doesn't cover other parts of the Western Front, of the Eastern Front, like Serbia. It's very, very fiddly mechanically, and you're tracking, each unit has to be tracked on like two different bases, how strong it is and what its morale is. I didn't enjoy it, but I'm not saying it's a bad game. It just didn't work for me. And remember, yet again, I was playing the full campaign, so I only rated that a 4 out of 10. And we have some more successful ones. We have the Battalion Combat series, the new one, Valley of Tears, which covers the Yom Kippur War on both fronts. Excellent system. It's got weird mechanics which you think, nah, there's no way this can produce any sort of historical outcome, but it does. It's a big learning curve, but BCS is well worth it if you're willing to put in the effort again to play something like that. And I would rate that as an 8 out of 10. We've got the Last Blitzkrieg, which is another BCS entry to a system which covers the Ardennes offensive. Excellent game, excellent system. It's very hard to get hold of. The only issue I found with it was the fact that the divisions weren't color coded, and sometimes you could end up removing the wrong counter. It is a game where, as the Germans, you've got to do well in the first couple of turns. You really, really have to. Otherwise, it's going to be a no-hoper. You're never going to win it unless it's something you really have to be experienced, I think, to take the campaign on as the Germans. Oh yeah, something I didn't mention. I play all these games solo. So yet again, opposed, no idea. Could make a game I don't like. Absolutely fantastic. Axis Empires, which is the latest designer edition. Compass Games. The problem with this one was my fault. I messed up the campaign at the start, and then I had to restart it. I started with the 1937 start, messed it up. Was it 1935? I think it's 1935 start. Messed it up. Then I had to restart in 1939, and by the time I did the restart, I didn't want to play it anymore. So I would rate it 6 out of 10, but that's probably a bit unfair because of the way it was my fault entirely. That it's a very expensive game, but you can get the older versions, which are basically the same game but just not as flashy. Okay, we've got another controversial one. Invasions Volume 1. This is the Wisdom Owls game attempting to cover the fall of the Roman Empire. Effectively, this one covers, I think, about 300 to 600 AD. It's a horrendously complicated game. Very difficult to learn, very difficult to play. It's fiddly, it requires bookkeeping. It's my conclusion on it, it's just not worth the effort and it's just not fun. It may be a good game. I don't know, there could be a good game buried under there, but not for me. A 3 out of 10. Another one that comes up, which is possibly quite controversial, and I did say that it was just me that didn't like this. This was Mr. President, which is like a simulation of running the American presidency. It's a solo game. It's very complicated, but it does have the best manuals I have ever seen in my life, and a lot of them. But it's a very much step-by-step playthrough. It's not difficult to play through. You just follow the rules as laid out for each particular part of the phase via the rule book. And for me, I just didn't like it. I found the American domestic politics side of it a bit difficult as well, because it doesn't mean a lot to me. All this the Senate, the Congress, and all these different sort of political appointments, etc. I did like the sort of global global strategy side of it. Just wasn't for me, really. I'd rate it as a 4 out of 10. For the amount of effort I was putting in, I wasn't getting the fun out of it. Couple of honourable mentions that I played for OCS Korea. Good solid system, operational combat system. It's difficult to learn, but I quite like the emphasis on logistics. Some people would hate it where everything's controlled by your supply system, but I think it's more realistic portrayal of war than a lot of these other systems. I stopped playing because I wanted to do something else, but I would rate it as a solid 7 out of 10. Also OCS Burma, which I set up and got started. Same thing, great it's a good part of the Second World War that doesn't get covered much, which is the Burma campaign, and it covers the Japanese invasion of India. Yeah, again, another 7 out of 10. I decided to play something else. There wasn't any other reason I didn't play it through. And we'll finish off with one more, La Batiale de Quatre Bras, part of the La Batiale game series. I didn't like this one either, and I didn't like it because it's a game that has multiple rule sets, and people recommend you use a rule set that doesn't necessarily come, well, doesn't come with the one in the game in the box. That introduces problems. The rule book it also isn't very clear on certain things. The thing that did it for me is the counters have two sides. So half your information's on the front and all your combat stuff's on the back. Once your counter's turned over, everything's like grey for one side and slightly darker grey from the other side, or maybe it's white for the other side. When the counters are face up, it has the uniforms. The counters are the colours of the uniforms. Obviously somebody thought, oh wow, this is a great idea. Well, it isn't, particularly for Quatre Bras when you've got elements of the Allied army, which were originally part of the French army, and you've got units with virtually the same colour schemes on different sides. Nah, it was a dud for me, and I would have to give that a 4 out of 10. Right, that's it. I think I've covered a lot of games, and I know it wasn't very interesting from a visual point of view. And this is, as I say, this is my opinion, playing the campaign versions of these games solo. And just take that for what it's worth.